go around the room and say who's here. Erin, starting with you, please.
Sure, Erin Earl, Chair of the School Committee.
Kenny Dubas, Superintendent.
Andrew Hennius, Attorney for the School Committee.
Jen Lima, School Committee member.
Bob Mitchell, Interim Assistant Superintendent.
And Colleen Schnack, School Nurse Coordinator.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. So just for clarification, the voting members, first off, it doesn't look like there's anybody here for citizens' comments. So we'll move on to the approval of the minutes from the July 10th meeting. Just for clarification, the voting members of the committee are myself, Bob Mitchell, Ken Duba, and Erin Earl. So of the voting members, did everybody have a chance to review the minutes? Did everybody have any questions? Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? So all of the policies that are on the agenda for today are policies that are part of RIDE's annual health report, and these are the policies that are need to be looked at just because they seem to possibly require some updating or review. So Colleen, you said there are a couple that you wanted to provide some input on. I don't know whether you want to handle those first or whether you want to stay for the entire meeting or what works best for you.
Whatever works best for the committee. I have time.
Okay, all right. I didn't want to make you sit through all of them if you're not. So we'll just take them in the order that they're on the agenda then. So the first one is the food allergy one, and I had sent out the agenda along with some proposed revisions to everybody today. Did everybody either get that now or before? Okay. So this food allergy policy as it stands, it looks like the last revision was in 2012. And if it's okay with everybody else, what I'll do is I'll just give some comments and thoughts that I had on it, and then everybody else can chime in after that, if that works.
Sure.
So the three things that I noticed on this was that the philosophy paragraph in the policy as it stands quotes some statistics. Whenever I see numbers, I always try to verify that they're up to date, and I couldn't verify. Well, it looked like that one of these statistics was out of date, and then the other one it looked like I couldn't verify. So my proposal or suggestion would be to remove this paragraph and replace it with something that I saw in some similar policies from other districts that just says that food allergies can be life-threatening, and the level of sensitivity and the types of severity vary in different individuals. This is in the proposed revision I sent out, and therefore the school's approach to preventing and treating food allergies must be individualized yet comprehensive. That way we're not constantly having to revise statistics or things as it goes. My second question was there's a paragraph that relates to school bus drivers and making sure that they are trained, but I had a question about whether or not the school bus drivers are actually carrying EpiPens, and they're not. So I just wanted to talk about clarification around that.
Sure.
And then my other question was, Joyce has said that RIDE is requiring a separate tree nut policy. Other districts do have one. We only have one, and I'm just wondering whether we actually need to have a separate one, and if we do, whether we can just have the same policy. Because I looked at the other districts, and it's really the same policy, just called two different things, and whether that would be sufficient. So those were my three questions on this one. Colleen, do you want to chime in?
Sure. Starting with the philosophy, if you wanted to include it, I did update the statistics, and I'm still getting about 8% because it's 1 in 13 children. But again, and that's from foodallergy.org, which is a reference that we use pretty often. The 30,000 emergency room visits is actually 200,000. But again, if you don't want to keep updating that, that's fine. If you want to just put in the piece that you had written on the bottom, that's fine. The second thing was the bus. The bus. So I train the bus drivers annually with Michelle Hume. They do not carry EpiPens on the bus. We do in each school, we do have EpiPens that the school nurse can administer to an undiagnosed person. On the buses though, however, some of those students do self-carry their EpiPens to and from school. Many of them, especially elementary school students, are not able to self-administer. so that bus driver or aide could use that EpiPen or epinephrine autoinjector for that particular student.
Okay.
So they're taught how to recognize food allergies or bee sting allergies, recognize anaphylaxis, and to administer the epinephrine autoinjector and to call 911 and get emergency care as soon as possible.
Colleen, I have a question. I think it referenced bus drivers. Do the monitors or the folks that are on the buses riding along with them get the same training? Because I'm thinking like the driver's driving and the monitor might be the person
the
assisting.
monitors do as well.
Okay, thank you.
Just wondering, under staff training, if we should specify who is getting trained and by who. So you mentioned that you're doing the training. And I would just suggest that under the paragraph of staff training, I know we can't delineate every single staff member or employee, and it just says in all schools, the NKSD, the principal of school administrator shall identify school personnel, but it might be worth it that we maybe key people, and then also say that the school nurse will provide the training, so we know who's providing the training.
Sure, and typically the school nurses in the schools do provide the training to the staff. We do that on those professional development days in the beginning of the school year, when we have really everybody together, so it's easiest to do it.
And then separately do the bus monitors and
Yes.
drivers on it.
So Kenny, we're proposing in that staff training section, you want to put some language, more specific language in?
Yeah, I would call out bus drivers and bus monitors specifically in here. I mean, it does say that, shall identify school personnel, but I'm just thinking that, so all school staff, what Colleen is saying, get trained. But depending when that training's happening, that might just be staff in the building. And if we're looking
And I
to
can't
make
speak
sure,
to the high school because it's such an enormous amount of personnel. They may do things a little differently, and also because the students there can self-administer. So it's just different than the elementary school.
and then I would also expect that students that have individual health plans, teachers that are involved, and other staff that are involved with those health plans, they're getting individual training
They're-
based on the student's health plan.
They're more focused.
So just under clarification, so if a kindergarten gets stung by a bee on the bus and has an allergic reaction, what happens?
It sounds like if they are carrying their own EpiPen, then the staff can utilize that, and if they do not have one, they have to wait until 911.
So that, I guess that's my question. I just wonder how many 6-year-olds are carrying EpiPens.
It's not typical, but they do. There are kindergartners that do have EpiPens or epinephrine autoinjectors, both in the health office and, their parents feel strongly that they should have it with them at all times, so they will have it in their backpack. And transportation is notified by us, who has what allergies and if they're self-carrying.
Can I suggest something under the paragraph for communication? Right now it reads, in all schools and NKSD, the principal school administrator shall ensure that all, no, that's not it. Actually, okay, so it's that, but it's the highlighted paragraph on page 4. The principal school administrator shall work with the transportation administrator to ensure that school buses are equipped with required communication devices and that drivers are properly trained. I just wonder why it's falling on principal school administrator when we have a transportation supervisor who oversees busing and bus drivers and monitors. Should the responsibility be on that person? Because otherwise the principal at every building are then trying to coordinate with all the buses, and most of the buses go to multiple buildings. And it just kind of seems like a lot of over communication, and something might get lost if we just say that the transportation supervisor is responsible for that. That just seems to be a little more streamlined.
So you're saying the transportation administrator should be the one who's responsible, period,
Yes.
like take the
I would
principal school
take principal
administrator
school
out of the
administrator
loop.
out of there.
Well, so I read that too, and I was wondering if it was what you were talking about is somebody has to tell the transportation administrator who has the allergies. So I wasn't sure if that fell on the each like only if Forest Parks people are gonna know to tell the transportation administrator, or if it would go to you and then to them. So I think whatever we're doing in practice should be reflected here, but I wasn't sure if that's why that they were included in that sentence.
Actually, this paragraph doesn't even touch on notifying anybody about an allergy on the bus. This is just strictly about training.
Communication devices,
Yeah.
training.
Like, that doesn't even cover the piece about, like, knowing who.
I was
on the bus.
I was assuming that like part of the training is who has the allergies. That's I made that leap in my brain.
So the first paragraph
Yeah.
gets into making sure students with that,
Mhm.
whatever those concerns are getting communicated to the pertinent personnel.
Mhm.
That's the very first paragraph, first sentence in that opening
But I-
paragraph.
I mean, the school nurses really are the people that are doing, making sure that everybody knows.
So maybe it should say in all schools in NKSD, the principal/school administrator in conjunction with the school nurse.
Yeah, but this is it's like two different things. So it says the principal and administrator shall work with the transportation administrator to ensure that the school buses are equipped with required communication devices. What does that mean?
I would say that the radios, right? Make sure every school bus has a radio to be able to communicate back to the school in order to
Or
indicate
paramedics or
emergencies
bus.
or whoever it may be.
And that the
they're calling.
drivers, are properly trained to recognize.
So maybe I'm missing a piece here. If there's a child with a severe allergy, do all the staff in the building know who that child is? Or isn't that a violation? Like, where did
It's on more of a need
That's
to
kind
know
of where I'm
basis, so
wondering,
the
yeah.
classroom teacher,
Mhm.
the teacher assistants who work with that child, especially in the cafeteria, the specialists, library, PE.
And so do the bus drivers know if they have a severely allergic child?
And Michelle Hume is really good about making sure that, and we're also good about making sure that we communicate with Michelle, who has, serious medical problems, including food allergies that can cause anaphylaxis.
And that communication comes from the school nurse?
Yes, and then Michelle disseminates that to the bus staff.
I think Ken's just saying, like, remove the word the principal
Right.
from that sentence. And would it be accurate to have it say, school administrators shall work with the transportation administrator? Because it could be the nurse, it could be,
But the nurse is not a school administrator.
yeah.
I think I just
That
I'm
whole part's
reading this
weird.
to me.
Yeah.
I just think when you think of hierarchy of who's reporting to who,
Mhm.
the bus drivers and monitors and the oversight of the buses, the vehicles, of the safety of the vehicles would fall on the transportation supervisor, not a building principal or a building administrator. So that's the person that should be making sure the buses are equipped properly and that they're receiving the training, even though the training's going back to the school nurse, right? So the transportation supervisor should be coordinating that with the school nurse to make sure that's getting done.
So just strike the principal/school administrator shall work with,
So shall ensure, get rid of work with transportation
Yeah, but-
administrator, right?
the transportation administrator doesn't report to the school principals. So it shouldn't, I think you just get rid of it.
And just say the transportation administrator shall ensure that the
Yes.
school buses,
Yeah.
And it probably should say supervisor because that's the title.
Yeah.
Transportation supervisor.
I was wondering if we could just add one more allergen under, and I can wait if you want to finish.
No, you can keep it where,
Under policy statement, definitions, and background information,
what page are you on?
that would be page
1
2.
and 2.
Okay.
Food allergy is a normal adverse reaction. On the bottom, it lists, peanuts, tree nuts, milk, soy. One emerging allergy is sesame that we're seeing, and that's also supported by foodallergy.org.
And where is that?
On the page 32 on the top. Second paragraph,
Second paragraph.
last sentence of the second paragraph.
Peanuts, tree nuts, milk, soy. Could we add sesame as well?
Oh,
First
food
one.
allergy,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Most common food allergies are to peanuts, tree nuts, blah, 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 right there.
Yeah.
Okay. So add subcommittee. Like, okay, yeah. I feel like I missed one thing. Where were we adding, were we adding bus driver under communication under that all school employees and other adults, including but not limited to school nurse, teachers, classroom teachers? Were we adding bus
Yes.
drivers in there also?
I think that was the recommendation.
Okay.
Ken, was that right?
Yes, bus drivers, bus monitors.
Does it specifically say teacher assistants?
Classroom teachers, special aides.
It says aides.
Is that, that's not the same thing. Is it the same thing?
I mean, a teacher aide, teacher assistant, word gets used.
Is it the same thing?
I mean, we're revising, so if we want to use the term that we use in the people word, that would change it to teacher assistant.
Let's
And
change it.
that's,
How does it work with substitutes?
Substitutes are difficult because quite often we don't even know the substitutes in the building. They're not there when they check in. We do, you know.
do the teachers have a subfolder with
Yeah,
all the
I
information? So
was
maybe
thinking
in-
substitute teacher assistants. But with substitute teachers, they have a subfolder and they have all of the healthcare plans and medical problems.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just noticed they were specifically called out, so I was wanted to make sure we were.
The other thing, under communication, it says after it lists all of the personnel, there's a dash, it says who may be involved in the care of a student diagnosed with a peanut tree nut allergy. But it's more than just a peanut tree nut, isn't it? All allergens? I mean, there could be a health plan for another type of allergen.
Yeah, the peanuts and the peanuts and tree nuts are the most concerning because of the oily residue that it leaves behind. So unless someone is consuming a milk product or wheat or something like that, they're probably not going to have an allergic reaction to that extent. But we've seen students that have been touched by someone with hands with oily residue have an allergic reaction. It's just
I think,
more serious.
Ken, are you saying that maybe just make it more general though? Like, I guess the question is there a world where there may be people involved in the care of a student diagnosed with a different allergy and shall be informed of an
they have a individual
IHCP?
health plan.
Yeah.
So maybe it's an allergy-related IHCP or EHCP period, right? Regardless of what the allergy
Yeah,
is.
Or
just
is it
other-
specifically
or just
called out
says-
because-
Or it just says other
The
allergen.
statute.
You could you say peanut, tree nut, or other food allergy?
Other food allergens.
Yes, other food. So then it,
Makes it broader without
Yeah,
taking out that
but also
specificity.
pays particular attention to the peanut tree nut.
Jen, going back to the philosophy part, when you're ready, I heard you recommend, did you mean removing that entire philosophy part and replacing that sentence, or just replacing those first two
No,
sentences?
eliminating what we have in there and just replacing it with
Yep.
one small paragraph.
Okay. I wonder if, because there's some stuff in there about I thought the rest of it was fine. Like the rest of the philosophy was fine. I totally agree with you on taking out statistics that need to continuously be checked and updated, and also if we were going to keep them, I would cite them. But like, I think like some of the rest of it's like important, I think, for people to understand like kind of why a policy like this needs to exist.
Okay, we
I'm not gonna like die on a hill, I think everybody knows, but like, I don't know, I would just take out those first two sentences maybe, and then, like, I didn't think the rest was,
So
Perfect.
starting with nearly every school has students who have a severe.
Yeah.
We can do that.
it's not a big deal. I just didn't think, I didn't have a visceral reaction to it.
No, I just was,
Yeah.
like I said, I was looking at other policies, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that one's nice and simple, and it only had that, so
Yeah.
I'm not strongly opposed either way. I just, like I said, the other statistics were
Mhm.
off, so I was like, oh, let's just get rid of it, but yeah, no, that's fine. So
Well, let's see, it's just my opinion. Bob or Ken, any thoughts on keeping it, not keeping it?
I mean, I would go either way. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with what's there. The other language is more concise, it's just one sentence and easier to read. But
I like the stuff about effective prevention and treatment plans, well-trained staff and clear communications can save lives. Like, I thought that there was some value to some of the stuff,
I
but
think it's good.
I also I understand brevity too sometimes. Jane would be that.
No, my only thing would be take out the statistics because they
Yeah, I would take out the first two
Yeah.
sentences. That's fine.
So if we start with schools are considered high-risk areas for students with food allergies? Or,
I think nearly every
Nearly
school.
every
Nearly every
school.
school has students who have severe and sometimes life-threatening, and then just go down from there. And if you wanted to keep your sentence that you found, I think it's nice. You could start with that if you wanted to.
that's that second paragraph, it
Yeah.
just is.
Oh,
pared
just
down.
that one.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Is there anything that's in practice that's not in this policy that you all are doing that maybe we should document or?
No, I looked through it and it seemed like overall it was still relevant in everything that we're doing. Mention the posting of signs, because we're supposed to be posting signs if there are food allergic children in the building. So I cross-referenced it with the Rhode Island rules and regs for health programs and also our standing orders, so I think it's...
we'll make those
So-
changes for the,
Yeah, so we recommend,
meeting.
I'll make a motion to recommend to the school committee that we make the changes as we just discussed, which are under the philosophy paragraph, we're gonna eliminate the first two sentences and start that paragraph with nearly every school has students. We're going to add sesame to the list of food allergies. We are going to add bus drivers and monitors to the list of staff who are trained, and we're going to change aid to teachers' assistants. We're going to add other food allergy to the list of, we're going to add other food allergies to that paragraph as well, so it says may be involved in the care of a student diagnosed with a peanut tree allergy and or other food allergy. We're going to change the paragraph under communication that starts with the principal school administrator. We're going to eliminate that. We're going to change it to be the transportation administrator will be responsible for ensuring that school buses are equipped.
transportation supervisor.
Oh, transportation, sorry, I had administrator struck out. Yep, the transportation supervisor, and we're going to add monitors to that to be properly trained. And that was all the changes that I had. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you did. I think you got them all. I'm assuming that you cross-referenced the policies that are referenced in this one. Maybe we should just check that before it goes to the school committee if we haven't done it already.
Which
There's a couple general laws, and then it references the bullying policy and the GBGC/JL. I just think making sure.
The two general laws are fine,
Yeah, I cross-referenced 31 and 32.
and this policy wouldn't comply with that. You don't need to say, all 32 says is you have to have a policy that protects students with peanut or tree allergy.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
would certainly
I did check
comply
the
with that.
statutes, yes, and where's the
So-
policy?
Yeah, I knew the statutes were right. It was the, it's on page 3 at the top. It references GBGC/JL.
The wellness
Oh,
policy.
Yeah, which is
yeah.
fine, but I know that the committee,
I'll
anytime
check that, because
that,
we just modified
Yep,
the,
and then,
I will check that, yep.
and then there's another one at the bottom, Jen.
Who's the school physician?
Howard Silversmith from Ocean State Pediatrics.
And he does things that he's referred to in this.
And then
Yes,
JBA
so we
at the
update
bottom.
the medical standing orders, which is JLCE every year, and it was just
On page
updated
one.
in June.
And
Yeah.
sure, it's fine, but as we're revising and things, anytime we cross-reference something, I think it's just good
Yeah.
to double check and make sure
Yeah.
that it's still accurate.
So I'll make that motion, can everyone second it?
Sure.
Okay. All in favor?
Sorry, I was just reading something, I was looking at the other one's policy.
Okay. Okay. All right, so then, the one thing we didn't talk about though was, do we need a separate peanut treatment policy, or?
Yeah, that's right.
As far as I know, I didn't read that.
That's what
Wait,
Jules
what?
said, Jules said that the person from RIDE said that we needed to have a separate peanut treatment policy.
I would push back on that. I mean, I just pulled the statute at Dr. Earl's suggestion. It doesn't say you need a separate one, it just says you need a policy ensuring the safety of.
Right,
And
that's
this one
what
clearly
is.
says right off the
Right.
bat that, so I think that would be semantics on Ride's part.
Okay,
That-
okay. Yeah, I mean, because this clearly covers
Yeah,
everything
that's
that
what
the
it's for,
statute says.
exactly.
Okay, all right, I'll, Jules gets back from vacation. We can check this out.
Yeah, and maybe just, once the school committee updates the policy, maybe just sending it over to ensure, because our intent is obviously to comply with whatever they're
Right.
hoping for, but it sounds like we actually are going above that.
Yeah. Okay, so then the next two were JLF, reporting child abuse, and JLFR, which is the reporting child abuse regulations. So we have a lot of policies that are the policy and then they have the regulations. And I would like to, wherever we have those, just combine them, because I think it's, I don't know why we have two for each of them, but so what I sent over is a revised policy that combines the two. So the first thing that I'm proposing is to delete JLFR, which is the regulation policy, and it will combine it all under JLF, because I think it's cumbersome to have two.
Why they did that.
So, that seems to be an NSBA thing, and I to be honest with you, I don't like it.
Yeah.
But
A lot of this stuff is
I wonder
great,
if
but
there's a reason though.
I mean, I guess the reason would be to kind of keep your policies streamlined and then how they're implemented separately, but you're still putting them in the same policy space and you have to read both to.
Yeah, you gotta read them both,
I'm
and you
not
gotta
sure.
remember how to update it, like, I don't know, that's just my personal, like, to have.
Can you check, Andrew? No, I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just curious if they had like, if there's like a procedural reason or something.
Yep.
Yeah, like if it's a regulation, why is it a policy? Like it's just, it's.
Could be something with like legality stuff or something.
It's yucky, but, okay, so for now, I sent it.
We can
over.
move, yeah.
Yeah, so for now, I sent it over like that. So the one that you have is combined, and I just closed out my email, so hold on 1 second. So the bulk of the edits in this one are. I think I just deleted the whole thing. Okay, so the bulk of this is basically just revising the two, updating it for gender neutral language, and then Ken had mentioned that this reference a form, the principal will complete the approved form, which is a form that is filled out whenever a report is filed with TCYF, and did you find
I
it?
did not find it.
Okay, so the question is there a form? What does the form look like?
If there isn't, then we need to
Right.
create one to go along with
Yes, and we should attach the form, and if there isn't a form, we should create a form and then attach it.
I would suggest updating on page, I would suggest adding page numbers to this document, and then on page one, it references guidance counselors. I would change that to school counselors. Page one, number two, under reporting child abuse.
Oh, social worker or guidance.
Yeah, I would just change it to school counselor, small, but while we're here. And then have we confirmed with, like, should we look at DCYF's website to see if, like, make sure that, like, how they, you know, like,
The statute that this references ties to this.
okay.
Yeah, I
Perfect.
checked that, I was just
Great.
reviewing that.
I think the three of us
Just,
all checked
yeah.
it.
Yeah, that's what I just want to make sure
It's really a
that,
24-hour notification.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
with those changes that happened a few years back.
yeah. Jen, I don't know why following has to be capitalized. And number 3. The formatting is actually really weird on this document, but.
Yeah, it's like that.
And there's another his, hers on number 5.
Does anybody else have any comments, questions on this one? Aside from the whole regulation and the form thing?
Mine was just the form, I just want to make sure we have something in the district so it's consistency
Yep.
between the buildings.
Okay, so do you want to hold on this one until we find out about the regulations, Erin?
No, I don't think, no.
Alright, so,
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure.
Ken, did you have a form in Jamestown? We had one.
We did not have
We had a
a
form
change.
I can get, I know Warwick has a form, I think SK, I can find a form if you don't have
We
one.
just had what was expected to be documented.
Can I ask you a procedural question? Why would it go to the director of PPS? Very end, last sentence. Of these two.
It usually just, once it went to DCYF, it would just be copied as the superintendent.
Yeah, that makes sense to me,
I don't
but
know.
I didn't
You're
understand
right.
why a
Good
copy would
question.
go to the
I have no
director of
idea.
PPS. That was something
Yeah,
that caught my
I mean,
eye.
it should be going to the superintendent's office.
Yep.
Maybe, sometimes the director of people personnel visits student services and for oversight, but I don't,
Yeah, I mean, that's fine if it makes
think it
sense.
needs to go to both places.
Maybe it's a checks and balances thing, or somebody's out or something, they wanted it to go to 2 administrators, but that, I just, when I was thinking about hierarchy and whatnot, I was like,
I was curious about that as well, because I didn't have
I think we're probably good to just have it be the superintendent's office, so it's not going to different locations.
do you want me to pull that one out?
Yeah, photocopy to the superintendent's office.
Okay. Okay, so then I'm gonna make a motion for this revision to the full school committee with the following changes. Eliminate JLFR and modify JLF to change all his, her references to their, change guidance counselor to school counselor, change sex of the child to gender of the child, eliminate capital and following in number 3 to a lowercase f, and then eliminate director of people personnel services in number 5.
So moved.
Okay. All in favor?
I'll second that for you.
Hmm?
Did you have a second? You, oh,
Bob second.
oh, I thought Bob moved, sorry.
I did.
Whatever.
Okay, okay. I thought I moved, but okay, so.
Oh, no, you can
that's
move if you
fine. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Andrew, is this one referenced probably in the new policy that we just approved?
The global anti-harassment.
Yeah.
It might be referenced, but I would think for the reporting purposes, it would refer back to this one.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I can double check that.
Yeah, I just, this like JLF like stuck in my mind and I was like, I feel like it's in that one.
Could very well be.
Yeah.
Could very well be.
I think it'll still be fine, but
Well, if the said harassment constitutes, abuse, then you refer to this
Yeah,
policy for reporting purposes. I'll double check it.
thank you.
Okay. The next one is the weapons policy JICI. And the notes that I had on this one were that we were updating it for gender neutral language. We were updating the statutes.
There was a typo in the statute.
Yep. And we were eliminating references to expulsion and updating that to reflect what actually happens now, because we don't expel students. And I think that was it for this.
Can I just share one ridiculously icky thing? Sometimes principal, I noticed in a lot of these policies, sometimes principal is capitalized and sometimes it's not. Even in the same policy, sometimes it's capitalized and sometimes it's not. I don't know that it's appropriate one way or the other. It's just.
It should be capital. It's referring to a specific person, right?
So,
That's the way it's supposed to be, right? If you're referring to a specific person.
So just an FYI, there's little P's all over.
Would you like
Do you-
to turn them into big?
Dr. Diva, what do you think? Do you have capital P's or lowercase P's?
You're on the spot now.
I will say I was always blamed for using too many capitals back in the district, but I would capitalize principal.
Okay, we can do capital P's. We'll do that.
I do think it's nitpicky, Bob, but I think things like that are important because, like, when people are reading something that is coming out of education, that is,
Yeah.
you know, like, I think it matters,
I
and
used
so.
I used to check and I used to have
Yeah.
several people look at it for that very reason, and sometimes we're so
It helps
close
with
to
credibility.
a document too,
Yeah.
we miss things that may be a little more
I
obvious.
think that the consistency part
Yeah.
matters too.
Definitely.
Right now, I'm not seeing any principle. Okay, here we go, buildings.
It's towards the bottom of the page.
Yeah, the term of such removal shall be.
So I see on file in the principal's office, where is this principal? Subject to the judgment of the building principal.
The second paragraph of the policy statement.
What is the definition of possession?
Did we talk about this one already?
Not in this, not
Not in
in
this,
reference to this though, Andrew? Like,
I mean, I'd have to double check the criminal statute, but for
Yeah.
my possession is on your person, including a
Yeah.
backpack or something like that. Or in a bag that's under your control, would be my general.
Yeah.
What about your locker?
It's where you keep your belongings.
Yes,
right?
that's,
So I would say where they put it
I would
in
agree with that.
possession.
Yep.
Should we include
See, it's understood the possession, carrying, or use. So carrying maybe even possession.
I thought there was a definition of it in here. It shall be explicitly understood that possession, wasn't there possession?
it talks about it, but
Says
it,
shall be prohibited.
I thought we had a definition of possession in here.
I don't know if it's, I think I've read it before in, drug policies for the district, like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I saw it somewhere else, but I didn't.
Should we put a possession definition in here?
Well, so it says the possession used as defined by Rhode Island state law,
That's what I'm double checking right now.
legally classified. But that's referencing weapon though, legally classified as a weapon as defined by law. So it's not defining the possession, it's defining that part.
Yeah, because we clarify what a weapon is, we clarify what.
I'm just thinking you're with your
property is.
I mean,
friends, you
even,
know, like,
even like 16, 21, 21, 1 is penalties for drug, alcohol, and weapons offenses, and that simply says relating to the possession or use of.
Yeah, I mean, because we clarify what a weapon is, we clarify what school property is, but we don't clarify what possession is.
You know, this, again, you know, we can get really, carried away with this, but I was also thinking that, what about, like, something that could be sprayed, like pepper spray or.
I'd say you're still in possession of the canister.
Yeah.
If you again, to me, possession, maybe I'm oversimplifying it, is it's on your person or it's in your locker, it's in your bag.
Right.
Now, if
So-
it's in your bag and maybe Jen's got my bag that day, you know, maybe someone argues, well, I don't know, but
Because here's where I'm thinking, like,
That's control though, they have control.
that's my thought.
the chemical health policy says that if I'm at a party with you and you have a beer and I don't, I'm in trouble because you have the beer. Like, so if I'm with you and you have the gun, like, am I in
You're
trouble?
not in trouble in this
But
policy.
I'm not in trouble? Like,
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
So, like.
Yep.
And so I'm gonna get in trouble because I'm next to you with a beer, but I'm next to you in a room with a gun and I'm not
Yeah.
gonna get in trouble? Like, so where is possession?
fair enough. I mean, I just from the pure legal sense, that in the example you gave to me, if I'm there with a gun, I'll take the gun.
Yeah.
You don't have one, you're
Right.
not in possession of it.
Right.
The fact that I am in possession of it doesn't, you know, now maybe you've got some kind of a reporting requirement that, you know, you need to tell the principal or whatever
Right.
it was, but you're not in possession of it.
Right.
So,
That's why I wondered if there's, I just lost the policy. Was there something about mandatory reporting in this one?
So we're in,
Or like
we're in
reporting.
weapons, right?
Yeah.
So okay.
Like if I know my friend has a gun in their locker, is there a different policy that covers my responsibility to report it?
This is the only.
I bet there's not.
I
I'm
would
just
perhaps
guessing, complete
recommend
guess on my part, but I bet
putting
there's not.
something in regarding that. But I would also defer to our educational administrators here. I'm kind of thoughts on that, but like I'm just thinking like,
Well, it also does it go back just to the instruction that we do in our schools about see something, say something,
Yeah.
the responsibility if you know something's happening, you should be reporting it.
Yeah.
That happens through
I'm just thinking for
you know,
something,
those high school health classes, and when you're talking about the program, you know, see something, say something. I don't know necessarily you need that in a policy, but that's what should be taught to kids.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that, you know, I think that's one of those things that it should be almost like a mantra that kids hear every day, right? I mean, and because it does have an impact, right? So I've said this a million times. We used to say every single day, when I was the principal at Chariton High School, we used to say every day, please treat one another with dignity and respect. Said it every day, and then it became a part of the culture in the school. So I think if that becomes like a mantra, which is really important these days, you see something, so just remember, if you see something, say something. I think that's really important. I mean, I would do that.
I was just thinking like, as far as, like, not that like you wanna get children in trouble, but like if something's not covered under a policy, are you able to hold students accountable? So like, if you knew that there was a weapon and you didn't say anything, and then the student that with the weapon gets in trouble, like, are you also in trouble, yes or no? Like, what policy did you violate?
I don't know if the students should get told because they didn't say anything, they may be afraid to say something.
Yeah.
I think the responsibility is on the student who had the weapon, not so-and-so that knew it, because they may not really understand the need to. I think, you know, it's something we need to really, like what Bob's saying, you gotta drill that into our students, that if you know something or you're uncomfortable with something, you need to go to a trusted adult who should be reporting it. But you also don't want to punish someone because they didn't report it, because that could also impact other social.
Yeah, and I'm thinking the same thing, but maybe it shouldn't be, but it is different with the alcohol. I mean, I'm thinking even like possession of drugs in the school. I'm not sure you can discipline somebody if they didn't report it.
I don't think that should be something we're disciplining kids on, because then it's like we're disciplining because they're not safe. I don't know, I think we need to be more taking approach of being preventative and teaching our students about what they should be doing and should not be
I
doing.
agree with you 100%.
I wouldn't add something like that in this policy.
And this policy doesn't, this is just on school grounds, right? That's the, like,
Well, this should be school grounds or any school event, right?
School
Speak that,
sponsored.
or
School
It's a-
school sponsored, isn't it?
it says on school grounds.
School property shall refer to the physical grounds and buildings owned or operated by. So, I mean, in theory, it could be a school-sponsored event off of North Kingstown property.
Probably should add that.
The
Yeah.
way
So
this
under
was
school
listed.
or school-sponsored activity.
Yeah, I think I would just include it. That purpose part, right?
Yeah, I would have that at the end of that sentence.
So
it
how
reads,
should it, what should it say at the end?
So weapons on school property or school sponsored or at school sponsored events.
do we need to add that to the clarification part of it too?
Well, it's in the philosophy part too, so I don't know. Because it says on school grounds in that next paragraph, 5 sentences down. So I don't know if we want to add it there.
So it should be for consistency, so the same thing on school grounds or at school sponsored events.
Is there a difference between school property and school grounds?
Say that again?
Is there a difference between school property and school grounds?
I would say no.
I would probably just be consistent with language then and just call it school property. Or if you all prefer grounds, whatever I would use it
School
consistently.
property.
School property, yeah. So I would change that to property, Jen.
Where?
So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Under philosophy, it says the fifth,
It's the fifth line.
yeah, fifth line, it
school
says school
property,
grounds,
yeah.
change that to property,
Okay.
and then I would add,
Or at school sponsored.
Yeah, because it says in purpose, it does say property.
So of any kind of school property or school
School
sponsored,
sponsored events.
and then do I have to add school sponsored events, 2 clarifications also?
looking.
Well, school property says,
Well, hey,
that's
it's
more
defined,
the
school
definition.
property, yep.
So school property shall refer to the physical grounds and buildings owned and operated or utilized by the Princeton Public Schools and or any other building, grounds, or vehicle.
Which are officially being used by students and staff.
So do we want to clarify what a school sponsored event is? Me too.
Yes.
I think it probably wouldn't hurt. I think it would probably be covered under the, I mean, you could argue that if we're using a ballroom for the prom,
a-
that
then
would be
that's
school
technically
property
school
because that's
property,
being
right.
officially used, but I don't think it would hurt to clarify it, to be honest with you. I think it would be a good idea.
So Andrew, you'll work with Jen on the language for that. Buses fall under property, right?
Yeah, just
Bus stop,
physical grounds
Use
and
consider the
buildings
bus
or
stop.
vehicle.
Definitely.
Do we want to call those 2 things out? It says vehicle, so it says or vehicle, but that wouldn't mean bus stop.
I'll add bus stop, I just referenced that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is there anything else that's missing that we want to remove, that we want to add? Are there any types of weapons that have been created as a silly word, but I mean, this is from 2012. So, is there
Something I
anything?
thought do we need to put something about ghost guns or?
well, it does
Going through, I
say,
didn't read that, that's in
It
the.
doesn't say
it's
that
in the-
word, but
It is in the regulation when you look this
Mhm.
up, it does reference ghost guns. I'm not sure if we need
it's a
to
gun.
put that in here.
Yeah, I think I believe that's actually clarified under the 114742, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, it does say any other items classified as weapons as defined under whatever general law or law is prohibited.
Yeah, see, that's actually where you get your, I'm looking at it right now, so-called kung fu weapons, blackjack, slingshot, billy, sand club, sandbag, metal knuckles, slap gloves, that's what's in there now.
And then when you go into 1147, just reading through, not just 1147, 42, because I kind of went down that rabbit hole. It does explain like what a
Ghost.
firearm is,
Yeah,
it talks
yeah.
about ghost
Yep.
guns, so it's all within the statutes.
what's
And then the weapons seizure report, is this, does anybody know, is this accurate? Is this being used? Is this?
Has it been used in the past?
Double check, I was looking at that. Go back to that. 1 second. What was the question again?
The weapons seizure report that's attached to this.
I've never seen it before other than in this policy.
Okay.
I'll tell you that. I don't think it's a bad idea. Anything to obviously if it's a weapon, anything to document that, outside of the ordinary context of a disciplinary issue, I think is a good idea.
My question on this was, so it's filled out by the principal's signature, it says date reviewed and reviewer, and it's CC to the NKPD and the superintendent's office. So if it's being CC to those two places, who's the person who's actually reviewing it?
Question I don't see. Who's the reviewer? What's the point?
So if principal's filling it out,
And so the
then it's
superintendent.
going to,
Because my thought would be it's being reviewed by the superintendent, it's being CC to the superintendent.
CC, but it should be sent to the superintendent's office once it's completed.
That was my only question.
I was actually thinking that it's like an old carbon copy issue and that it probably, no, seriously, that like probably the original form was there and then when they converted it, like it probably like got signed by the superintendent, but like after they received it, but like because it's not like that anymore.
And actually, as I look at that, that may very well be like, so a good CC to the superintendent's office, and then date reviewed might be Jules or even Dr.
Right.
Who says, okay, I got it, I
Oh,
saw
like
it.
after, yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying though, but I bet it was when they transferred it
Exactly,
from
right,
the
yeah.
carbon copy.
Because it doesn't
And
even
it's
say
not
CC,
even-
it says C.
C. I was just gonna say, it's not CC, it's C.
I mean, I think though it's important for us to note that though, it talks about, so it says, shall be reported to the police department, form completed and placed on file in the principal's office with a copy to the principal, the police department and the superintendent's office. It doesn't say anything about the review or reviewed, like we should either state who that like should be or we should remove that line.
What we can say is form is completed and placed on file in the principal's office, reviewed by the superintendent, and copied to the police department.
It also doesn't say, like it says in the form, weapon its disposition, but it doesn't say anything in the policy about how to actually, like what is happening with the weapon.
Well, that's actually why I think the more I'm looking at this form, I think it's a great idea because okay, Andrew got caught with a knife. Well, very great discipline. What happened to the knife?
Right.
Totally
But God forbid something's more serious. Where did it go?
Right.
Is it still in the principal's drawer in his office or her office, or did we give it to the parent?
It should be getting handed to the police.
Right.
Yeah, but this would be a nice documentation of that, which says, okay, we saw this. This is the weapon that was recovered, and it was turned into the police. It was given back to the parents because it wasn't whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah.
When I left my job as an assistant principal, I had like 5 knives.
But we're
Because
not
they
giving
didn't
them
know
to
me.
Bob.
Yeah,
okay?
so they didn't play the system.
They didn't know,
Yeah,
what
no,
do you
that-
do with them after
that
you
was-
confiscate them, right?
Yep.
It's a good point.
So perhaps we should clarify that?
Yeah, I'm gonna suggest we not move this one forward and we hold on this one a little bit more until we can figure out like, what is actually happening, what should be happening.
It might be worth a call to the NKPD.
Well, and it depends on the weapon as well.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's a
Fair
gun,
point.
that's going right to the police department. If
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
knife, and depending on the size of the
Right.
knife,
Well, that's why I think
Again,
maybe we
yeah.
should.
Or you get
confirm
back,
with
you get back to
police.
the kid who just came from the camping
Right,
trip and has a
right,
camping
right,
knife in his
right,
thing.
yeah.
Maybe that doesn't get reported to the police, but again, I think it's a great thing to have documentation that this was given back to mom and
and that's
dad
something that
with.
goes to the parent
Right.
and guardian because it's.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe if it is going back to mom and dad, like mom and dad signed off that they got it,
Yeah,
like
it's,
those
yeah,
types
nope,
of things.
I think that's a good idea, honestly.
Okay, so we'll,
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion to hold on this and we're gonna do some further review.
Mhm.
Can I get a second on that?
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay. Next one is the,
GBC.
okay, GBE 3, which is the controlled substance and alcohol testing policy for employee CMV drivers, which is a commercial motor vehicle drivers.
Wait, which one you want?
GBE 3, controlled substance and alcohol testing policy for employee CMV drivers. So the last revision date on this policy is January 14th, 2020.
Did you send that one?
Wait, I don't, yeah.
There's no revision for this one. This one was just attached on the agenda, like, I didn't attach
Is that
it.
the Jamestown
A
drug
draft?
free?
No, this is just.
Right, that's not on the most
Yeah.
recent
We
email.
don't have it.
Well, no, it was on the agenda, but there's no draft attached, because I
Got
didn't have anything to propose for this.
Got it. What's the original policy?
GBE3 is in the agenda. If you click on the agenda, it should take you there.
I'm in the other email, so if I leave it, then at least I forget.
Gotcha.
I'll give them the policies though.
Yeah, if you go to the district page, it's
Yeah.
GBE3. Find it? It's
Oh, GB, okay.
Towards the top of the
Yeah.
section.
controlled substance and alcohol testing policy.
With the 3, got it.
Okay, so per the policy, this is for commercial drivers. Last revision was January 14th, 2020. So I guess my question on this one is, who is responsible for ensuring compliance with this and for keeping up with all the statutory requirements, et cetera, on it? And has anybody looked at it since 2020? Like, I'm guessing it quotes a lot of DOT
Yeah,
regulations.
we didn't write, like, this seems like,
Format wise too.
Yeah, this is
standards.
definitely not our written policy because it,
I mean, it is, I mean, it's,
well, I mean, it's
yeah.
our policy, but it looks like a DOT thing.
And then there's a form at the end.
Right.
Is this something that we would want
So, like, is this a transportation?
Mike, right, COO, like, where does this?
That's kind of, where does this live? Does this live with transportation, which lives with Mike, or Bob? Who does this?
So I would say this is, just by reading the purpose, this would pertain to drivers of our buses, any vans, any of our facilities, employees that are driving.
Yep.
School vehicles, so anyone that's driving a
Clouds.
school official vehicle.
Yep.
Such as buses, that's who would be under this. So I would say it would be the transportation supervisor and the facilities director. I know it falls under the CEO, but there are
Yeah.
supervisors in those departments that should be overseeing this with their employees.
So who should I send it to?
I would send it to Michelle Holm and Bob Currenti, and let's talk with them regarding the implementation of this and oversight.
Okay.
You think if there's anyone else that drives a school vehicle?
Only commercial vehicle, like a CDL or a CMV.
So it's not that many that would have.
Yeah, I think it's only a handful of people.
I would involve Mike too, because
Yeah, I would CC Mike.
Okay, so I'm gonna take this one and I'm gonna send it to them and I'll copy you, Ken. And I'll ask them to just take a look at that and see.
I wonder too if I can imagine that this, I was just looking to see if it like is connected to like a Rhode Island. Yeah, there's some DOT reference, like there's some references to some other things. So I think too, making sure that it's like up to date with their documentation.
Yeah, when I went in, I grabbed anything that was drug or alcohol related and this was one of them, so that's how it got pulled. Okay, so I'm gonna forward that one on to them. So then the next one is GBEC, which is the drug-free work and school one. This one is the one that applies to staff. According to this policy, the superintendent is responsible for implementing the policy. The last revision date on our policy is from 2006. A lot has changed since 2006. as far as awareness around substance misuse. The policy is very rigid and punitive, and I don't think it's really in keeping with best practices. Ken had sent me a copy of the policy from Jamestown, and they are much
This was just redone in March.
yeah, in keeping with the times in terms of offering, counseling and referral and things like that. So I was going to propose that we modify ours to reflect that policy, especially, they're talking about encouraging employees to seek voluntary treatment and things like that, confidential help. Ours is very punitive.
I would just say use inclusive language in that red.
Yeah, I didn't
no
modify
worries.
it for that, but just more for the overall tone of it.
Mhm.
And then another something that I noticed in the Jamestown policy, something for us to consider, not just for this one, but for other pertinent, policies that employees should be reviewing, is they have a note in there that said a copy of this policy is to be given to all current and new school employees at the time of their employment, and is to be posted in appropriate locations throughout the school department. I don't recall seeing that language in any of our policies, and that is something that we should probably consider revising. Some of our, I know there are some policies that have to be signed off on every year, or new employees are getting, that might be something that we
So we would send out a Google document that had, Google form listing all of the policies that staff had to review at the start of the year. And then they had to complete that form with their name and date, just signing off that they read all the policies, and they had to have it back to us by the beginning of October.
I think we talked about that at the last policy. Yes.
We do ours in at URI in Brightspace, and so it actually does a module. So it's kind of cool. You'll read it and you can go through and it collates it. Yeah. Yeah, we should probably at some point compile what those annual ones are, and then what those kind of onboarding ones are. Once we kind of gone through some of these.
I know when I was hired, there was a policy packet that I was given to review.
So any other changes?
No, and like I said, this is just the staff one. Yeah.
And I just, and this is, I shared this with Kenny earlier. I having been a health teacher for many years, one of the things that is sort of another pet peeve of mine is when people separate alcohol from drugs. So alcohol is a drug, and I think that whenever we're talking about alcohol in policy, it should be alcohol and other drugs. Because the way that it's in many policies, it's almost like there's a distinction between alcohol, it's not really a drug, but drugs are drugs. So I like alcohol and other drugs.
Valid point.
As a
Yeah, I agree.
for your consideration.
Yep. Yeah, that's actually one of the other things I wanted to bring up, because tobacco was separated too. And I said we've got drug and alcohol, we've got tobacco, we've got
Going back to my carbon copy.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, I'm serious. That's why it's like that.
Yeah.
We also use the term illicit drugs just because
That's something.
generalized.
Yeah. And now that cannabis use is legal for adults, that needs to be something that we need to change or keep an eye on with our policies. Also, is keeping up to date with the times for there. So my proposal for this one, for the staff one, would be just we make the modifications to ours to reflect Jamestown's with the updates for gender neutral language. Does anybody have any strong thoughts?
Well, I would say make the change. I would change the verbiage of what Bob said.
Yes, with the changed.
And then I also would say, I don't know how other districts are handling, because it says illicit drugs, including cannabis, and so I don't know if that needs to change.
I think there is language in there in it's either this policy or the other policy that refers back to the statute when it talks about illegal, right? Andrew refers to the statute to define what illegal drugs are, and I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, you have to remember that even though cannabis
it's
or
federal,
marijuana
right,
is
Oh,
legal,
yeah, it
but
should-
it
yeah.
still isn't legal to use at the workplace.
Correct,
So there's,
yeah.
It's just the way that they're talking,
Yeah,
the
it's
way
what it
that
says.
those two sentences are
the
written.
CC, it's the old days. Yep.
Yeah. And then is Stephanie's title Director of Human Resources?
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll change illicit to illegal, correct? This is student living of Kingstown. So does anybody want to make that motion?
Well, I'll start.
Okay.
I make a motion that we change the language in policy to alcohol and other drugs.
Which one, are you reading off of ours or off of theirs?
You just want a general one thing,
Yeah,
Jen,
I'm
just to
sorry.
send it forward?
Because it's in a lot of places.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd say just make a motion to send to the school committee, like basically the policy with the changes that we discussed
Yes, I
today,
changed town policy with that.
including that.
Discussion.
Yep. So alcohol and other drugs, illegal instead of illicit. Gender neutral, and what was the other one?
Do you agree with that,
And
nurse?
inclusive language, alcohol and other drugs and this is to
Yep,
To me,
And
it
then,
just,
um,
I think.
the title.
The
It doesn't-
presented to new employees, or is that in this part?
That's in,
It is.
that's
Yeah, that
in
was-
there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think back in 2006, alcohol was the only
Yeah.
legal
Yeah.
drug, so they kind of settled with that. One or the other.
Okay, do we have a second? So I made the motion.
Okay, Barbara, second that?
Second,
Okay, all in favor?
aye.
Okay. Okay, so then the next one is the tobacco policy, which is JICG. So this is just for staff and visitors. So it references the administrative regulations pertaining to use and possession for students, but I couldn't find that. I think it's referencing JICH, which is why I think it's weird that we have all these different policies for, like, one is for tobacco, one is for drugs and alcohol. I don't know if we can
I'd
roll
assume that it was
tobacco.
because of different, probably as the state
Right.
legislator was doing things, like, like it probably was causing policies to be created.
So this specific
Which one are you on?
policy, it's JICG,
H.
is tobacco product use on school property. It is only for staff and visitors. It does not cover students.
It does, that, in the enforcement procedures, it does include students.
It refers you out to another policy
Oh,
for students.
So not the R one, the other one. JICH.
Right, which is the drug and alcohol policy.
Yeah. That's the one you're looking at, or no?
No, right now I'm just talking about the JICG.
You mean alcohol and other drugs?
Alcohol and other drugs, right? So this one, JICG, which is the tobacco product used on school property, I feel like, is there a way to roll this in somewhere else, like, so that it just seems like a weird standalone policy? I mean, I guess there's nothing wrong with the policy as it's written. It just seems weird that it'd be like a standalone.
No,
Check
it's
23.
because whenever this RIGL 23209
Yep, that's what I'm gonna
put
pull
into
right now.
place, they made this policy.
Yeah.
There's no way.
That's my guess, and it might
Yeah.
even be similar to the one that we just looked up that says you shall have a policy covering.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, Smoking Restrictions in School Act 20.9, yeah. So I'm just wondering if we can't roll that into the other ones. and
Can.
Still be in compliance.
Yeah,
It's just
unless
one
it says
less-
you need a specific
Right.
standalone policy, then I would say you certainly
Right.
can.
This is a dumb question. Is vaping tobacco products?
It's in there, yeah.
Yeah.
Vaping is in there too. The last tobacco products.
Oh yeah, there it
at the
is. So
bottom.
when?
Definitions.
Oh, 2018, I guess. I was like, what?
That's been in the news lately too, the last couple of days. Have you seen that? Vaping on kids is a real concern
Yeah.
about the long-term effects of all of this.
It's weird that it says This policy has been in place since September 1, 1994.
Is that necessary? Just leave it at that.
So-
So, okay, so that's that one. There isn't really anything to do with that one, I just wanted to point it out. So then.
Do you have a recommendation of what you want to combine it with?
I wanted to see if we could roll it into either the.
Don't have stuff on school property.
Either
I'll
the
take
staff
combine those.
drug-free work in school ones, because they're referencing they put the student penalties in with the student drug-free. So why not put the staff in with the drug-free, or just leave?
Well, I think this probably refers, like this is anyone, right? So like if I'm at a football game,
Right,
right? And so this isn't,
Yeah.
I don't think you can be staff or student specific with like, when you're referencing
That's true.
property, that's
Yeah.
probably why it's separate.
Any person utilizing school
Yeah.
facilities.
Yeah.
Yep.
alright, so we'll just leave it.
But if there's other ones that talk about not having alcohol on school property or not having whatever, that's separate from, like, then those could probably be combined. You know what I mean?
Right, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, I have no recommendation for this one, we can just leave this as is then.
Did anyone else have thoughts or suggestions?
No, I would just, I would keep it the way it is.
So then the next two
Sorry. Oh, never mind. No, it's fine.
are the JICH and the JICHR, which are the drug and alcohol use as it stands catalog and the drug and alcohol regulations. So I agree we should change it to alcohol and other drugs. I got a whole bunch of stuff to say about all these. So the first one.
Jen, before we start, can we take a 2-minute recess?
Yes.
Great. I'll be right back. When you start with, I have a lot to say about this.
That was just too much.
I'll be right back.
Pretty benign, but really, I can roll that over to you if you want to have it, just so you can get it.
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't think they've had any issues with this, so, but we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
That's great.
Okay, so JICH and JICHR, these are the drug and alcohol regulations. The first thing is that if you look at the two, the penalties for violations of the policy seem to be in conflict with each other. So that's the biggest issue right off the bat. The second thing is JICH references mandatory meetings for both athletics and extracurricular activities, but I don't know if there are actually meetings for extracurricular activities happening. Again, like it doesn't, policy should reflect what we do, and we should do what our policies say. The policy also references a presentation at the beginning of the year or the season on substance abuse. That used to happen, like that was what the policy was created for. That isn't happening anymore. Like you just have to check a box when you register saying that you have signed and agree with the chemical health policy, but there is no actual presentation. We need to update this for inclusive language. The regulation 1 is full of references to pre-expulsion. And then JICHR has a paragraph that talks about a special circumstance in a case where a non-student, such as an adult parent, guardian, or visitor to the school is suspected to be under the influence of an illicit substance, and how the school would report that person to the local police. And I don't know, that paragraph really stood out to me as way overstepping the school's authority. So those were my comments.
I mean, I know that there is a pretty significant conflict, at least in my mind, and you had pointed it out to me. One, I guess the regulation, the regulation would seem to require a 30-day consecutive suspension from any kind of activity.
Yeah.
But then if you go to policy, that talks about 3 tiers, I believe.
Right. I mean,
so if nothing else, they need to be reconciled.
yeah. I mean, I think we should not be like, we should, in my opinion, like, kids need to be able to participate and we shouldn't be being harsh
Well, there
and
should
overly
be
punitive, like we should be.
measures put in place to support them, not just saying you're expelled from school,
Exactly.
depending on.
That seems to be more in line with the policy that's got kind of like your first violation and your second violation, where if you go to the regulation, it's more in lines of you're suspended for 30 days, and so, and again, whatever you all decide, you decide, but it should be, it's gotta be reconciled somehow.
One was updated in 2012, one was updated in 2002.
There you go.
Right, and that's the issue with having,
why?
that's the issue with having the R in the policy, like,
No, there's a reason though, I'm gonna find out. Now I'm
telling you.
We just need to make sure it's the same, and if this regulation is here also, does it need to be a separate document? I mean, shouldn't we all have it on one?
that's why I
Like, if we're
want
gonna say, like, here's what needs to be
happen.
taking place, it should be within that one
Right.
policy.
The
having to
JICH,
refer to different-
the measures that are in JICH are what is happening if you violate the chemical health policy, like that is what's happening. The JICH-R, that is not what's happening, and I personally don't think that we should be, I mean, a lot of kids, like, a reason for coming to school is athletics, like, so you don't wanna be taking away, like, their incentive for coming to school. And what's laid out in JICH-R, which is not what's happening, would be overly harsh and punitive, in my opinion. So I don't know what, like, JICH-R, I think is old and outdated, and I don't think it's being followed, but I think JICH is up to date and is what is happening, except for what I mentioned about, like, with the extracurricular activities and with the presentations, because those are not happening.
I don't know if you already said this, but there are a couple of different parts it references just parents. So just making that.
Yeah, I said inclusive language.
Yeah.
And
All right, I wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Things.
And then like what Bobby said with alcohol and other drugs, it needs to be updated for that.
So Jen, are you saying like if my student participates in the play, you don't believe that they're signing the same document if my student participates in lacrosse?
No, they are signing the same document, but
Okay.
what I'm saying is that the policy says that, the policy says, JICH, the policy says that students who participate in athletics.
Can you give me a page?
Page 2 of JICH says that student under prevention,
Okay, I'm there.
students who participate in athletics and or extracurricular activities will be required to attend a mandatory meeting with their parents once each year before their first athletic season or extracurricular activity of the current school year. Athletics holds a preseason night. I do not know if every single extracurricular activity holds a mandatory meeting with parents.
Yeah, so I definitely think that all the language in that paragraph references athletics except for the or extracurricular activity. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I do think it'd be interesting to check in with maybe the building administrators to, to see about current practices, because I don't want to make assumptions that they aren't, or what should or shouldn't be happening without conferring with them.
And it seems to that paragraph kind of lumps athletics and extracurricular activities together, and then it references the athletic director.
It literally looks like they,
So-
at some point, they added the sentence, or
Yeah.
extracurricular
That's what I'm
activities, because
wondering,
they
it
weren't
does
just,
seem like it was just
well,
added,
my guess is,
reading that way.
they were like, oh, we don't want to just, this isn't just athletes, it should be all students, blah, 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 but they didn't, eloquently edit the paragraphs, or maybe even put it in
Something probably happened at an extracurricular activity, and then they tried to amend the policy.
Yeah.
quickly
But
afterwards.
also
or
too, if
something,
this is
yeah.
pertaining to all students, shouldn't it be something that takes place in school? Why is this
Yeah.
being singled out as something that's happening outside of school? If this is a policy that's pertaining to all students, and it's for students that are in, an athletic team, it's for students that are participating in any of our extracurricular activities, which there are many, then, my opinion is that this should be something that's reviewed with them in school at some point, either during a health class, which doesn't always happen at the start of the year, but maybe it is something as part of an orientation that it gets reviewed with all students.
The contract, yes, I agree with the chemical health policy has to be signed by athletes and clubs because it's part of the registration. But I'll be honest with you, the student doesn't have to sign it, the parent can check off the box saying that the student has signed it. It's not something that the student
They might not be
see.
aware of.
Yeah. So.
I think there's two different things, like, what is the intent, right? And then like, how are we actually, like, what's the purpose of the policy and then how is it actually getting implemented are two different things.
Right.
But I think, to your point, Kent, like, perhaps first we want to review kind of what would make most sense for students and making sure and families, to get this information and then editing the policy to reflect that. And so maybe pausing on like the sentence like language until like that conversation can happen.
I would go ahead and have this reviewed with the building administrators, the athletic director, to see what is the best way for this to take place.
Because you also want consistency and you want, all of those sort of things for students.
Yeah, and I think like finding that, like Erin said, JICHR has been updated since 2002, and I don't think it's even. I don't see why we need it because it's all spelled out in JICH. So I suggest we hold on this one too then until we can get some more input from how it's actually being implemented. Is that?
Yes, that makes sense.
The next one is the Narcan policy. Colleen, you're up again. So the two notes that I had on this one were just to revise the statute and to add elementary school to the policy.
Yes.
Do you want to chime in on those?
Sure.
Which one are we on, just to be sure?
The naloxone policy, JLCD.
D. This was last revised in 2016, and let's see, 162135 that it refers to. I found an update in 2019, and with that, they added elementary school. They also
Sorry, who's they? The update?
Yeah, the update, the
RGO.
162135, the general laws.
Oh, okay.
It was updated in 2019.
Got it.
To eliminate school nurse teacher and put authorized school personnel, because it's not only the school nurse that can administer Narcan in the schools. And like Jen said, also at elementary schools. So we have Narcan in all of the schools right now. The school nurses are trained every year, and we're responsible for obtaining the Narcan for our buildings. So under policy on page 1, the first sentence is a little funny. I think it was taken right off of the general laws, but it should reflect the addition of elementary school. The other thing that should probably be deleted is that whole box with the item and the manufacturer and the quantity. We don't use injectable Narcan in the school systems. We have a nasal spray, a Narcan naloxone nasal spray that we keep on hand. So the nitrile gloves, the mask barrier device, and the instructions can stay. I don't think you need that box, but also eliminating the naloxone pre-filled syringe and the MAD nasal atomizer, and just replacing that with Narcan, in parentheses, naloxone, HCl, close parentheses, nasal spray, 4 milligrams, we have a 2-pack in each school, at least. The high school is even there.
So if we just take out, if we just leave it at B, the Rhode Island Department of Health recommends that schools provide intranasal naloxone and leave it at that, is that good, and just take everything else off?
Yeah, because in the general laws, it does not even say at a minimum each school should have the following
Okay.
supplies. But I think it's important to add, that the following supplies will be kept at each school building. Narcan, nitrile gloves, mask bearing device, step-by-step instructions.
Can you make a revision and send it to me so I can make sure it's accurate? Not now,
Yeah,
like
that's
just,
fine.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, do you want me to email that to you?
Yeah, that would be
Okay.
great.
Sure.
Perfect.
I would also say, Jen, looking at the very bottom of the document, it talks about like the use part and like the steps that should be taken. I would make sure that that is accurate.
Yeah, and anything
Yeah.
else that you think needs to be updated, changed?
Yeah, the use of naloxone, I cross-referenced it with the standing orders, so that is accurate. And under storage, the inspection needs a little tweaking, but I can send you.
Yeah, if you
send
could just
all
make
that.
any changes to this
Sure.
and send it to me, that would
Yeah.
be great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if there's anything that we are doing that's not on here, or, just so that it reflects what's actually happening.
Sure.
That would be great.
Colleen, do you know, and I'll follow up on this, that every school has a crisis team, like at Stony Lane has a crisis team?
In the emergency plan for like fire drill, every school, it says within that plan that all schools should have a crisis team.
Mhm.
Okay.
We keep track of first aid and CPR certified staff.
So that might be restraint training or.
Yep, CPI. And within that crisis team, it's typically the school counselors in addition to the principal and other people that might be in the group.
I didn't notice anything in here regarding like making other students and staff aware that this was available. I was just thinking about like what might happen in reality is like you go into the bathroom and you like find someone and like I was thinking about like, okay, like it's great that the school nurse is trained on this and that we have it available, but like if the greater body of students and staff don't know that it's in the building, then like they might not know who to notify or what to do. Like I don't know, I was just thinking like maybe culling out something regarding.
So typically it's with the AED. The AED is in an obvious place where anyone can get to it. And many of the schools have another box that we put right next to the AED clear box that has the Narcan right in it. And it's never locked. The AED is not locked. The Narcan box is not locked. So it's where it can be accessed, by all, even on for after school activities, athletics, things like that.
So
If you asked me where it was in any of the buildings in the district, I would not be able to tell.
Yeah.
And I did see the town council, because I know the town recently just put them in, they put the AEDs in and then they're looking at putting them in. So I just think like education is important and maybe putting in this, since we're revising this policy anyways, just making sure some sort of education piece is written into this policy is what I was thinking, just so that folks are aware of it. Or like, if you're a coach and you're after school and the nurse isn't there and nobody's there, like knowing that it's available and where, I think should be in this policy. Yeah.
just a raising of concern, so it's located in a box that's not locked, obviously it's an emergency if someone needs it, but what if it gets into the wrong hands and a student or someone takes it out? What's the danger of that?
It's actually not dangerous
Okay.
to administer even to a small child.
Yeah. Well, and I know with the town, this was the AD, one of them was locked and you had to call and then they would give you the code to unlock it, but if that's not, like, I don't know what that was.
Yeah, that was the AED that was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What an amazing substance.
Yeah.
It's amazing science. Be able to create something like that. When someone is near death and you give them this substance and they recover, it's to be
do the, like, I know I've had like the Narcan training, so like I would know how to use it, but is there an instruction on the box, like if a student grabbed it, would they know how, like would it show them how to use it?
Yeah, within the box or wherever the Narcan is kept, there's also a very simple instruction guide on how to use it.
So Jen, maybe we could just, when we're looking at that, maybe
Yeah.
put something in there about like kind of how it said like with communication for the other people, like something about communication or something about training or something, or awareness or whatnot.
That's great, thank you. Anything else on that one?
No.
Okay, awesome. So if we try and find one more out, I think they're important things this evening. Okay, so the next two are the JBA and JBAR, Prohibition Against Teen Dating Violence and Sexual Violence, and the Administration Regulations Against Teen Dating Violence. So the few things that I had on this were, we modified JBA to reference back to the new policy ACB. It needs to be updated for gender neutral language, inclusive language. I had a couple questions on these. It references a violence prevention task force in the policy. I wasn't aware that we had one, so I wanted to know if we did have one. I wanted to know whether did they reference forms and charts in the policies. They're listed in the regulations. I wondered whether that was something that students and staff knew where to access, or if those were only available after they came forward to report something. According to the policy, the principals will provide the superintendent of schools and the school committee with an annual report on incidents of teen dating violence and sexual violence which have taken place in the schools under their respective supervision. This report will include a statement describing what remedial action has been taken to address the incidents. I haven't seen one of those in my time on the committee, so I'd like to know what the status is on that. It also references parent education and community education around teen dating violence. I'm wondering what form that is taking. I'm not quite sure I've seen any of
I'm
that.
just doing a search
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
website
yeah,
to see
no,
what
I know.
landing's there.
No, I want to answer on everything. No, I know.
I know,
I'm waiting.
And I'm wondering who is actually filling out the forms in the policy. And then the last thing is it references a statute in the policy that when I went to go look it up, it had been repealed. So what happens when that happens, Andrew?
If we're referencing a policy that's been repealed.
A-R-I-G-L that's been repealed.
Yeah, well, by virtue of it being repealed, it's no longer.
So do
in
we
effect.
still reference it, or
No,
do
I
we
would
take it
no,
out?
take it out.
Absolutely not.
Take it out for sure.
Okay, so that was all I had on those.
Wait, which one you were on?
It's the two combined. It's
JBA.
JBA and JBAR.
And then my question too is, how does this one interact with some of the ones that we just, like with the harassment and whatnot? Like there's some crossover.
There is some crossover, and I think that the just like what Andrew had done was added the saying that if it rises to the level
Yeah.
of, then it refers back to that.
Right, it's kind of a back and forth, because then when they go to
Yeah.
the
It says
anti-discrimination.
it references here too.
Yeah, they could also say, I don't want to pursue it under a Title IX, even if it qualifies, I want to pursue it under the,
Can I,
so.
I was just curious about this on page 2, where it has all these definitions. The one definition that did not make sense to me, I think something needs to be added to bystander, because that's not the definition of a bystander, right? So what if it said something like non-intervening bystander, or a non-reporting bystander? You know what I mean?
It just doesn't make sense.
No. So to add something where, I think the point is that a bystander has a responsibility to report or intervene. So it's, you understand what I'm saying? I don't know if it even needs to be included, but it just doesn't make sense the way that it is, communicated here, it seems to me.
not all bystanders may not be the one who does not intervene or seek help. So, like, what is this getting at? Is this trying to make a point, like, you know something and you're not doing anything about it, so therefore,
Right.
like.
What page are
do
you
you-
on?
So I guess
Where it says witness / bystander?
when I read this, I read it as a bystander has a responsibility to report or intervene in something. I guess that's the way I think it was, the intention was, and that's an
Right.
assumption.
If you know something, you should be doing
Right,
something
right.
about it. And then it says, but does not intervene, so.
And I'm looking at the statute right now, it doesn't include, I haven't found it yet, any kind of, so that looks like it's our excuse me, our definition.
It's just, it's incomplete.
My other question was on the training for staff. It looks like staff are required to have training, but I couldn't tell from the policy whether it's a one and done or whether it's something that they are required to be trained on every year.
That is a really great definition of bystander in comparison to all the other ones that I
On
invited.
that page, yeah.
I think it's trying to make a point that, you know, what a
You're
bystander
doing a
is, and you're
report.
responsible,
Right.
so.
Yeah,
just
but
like
it's not a good
mandatory
definition.
reporter.
According to the dictionary, a bystander is a person who is present at an event or incident but does not take part.
I almost think it almost looks like a typo. But it's because it would make more sense if it said someone who's aware of it but does not intervene, because that's like the thing of bystander. It's like somebody that's seen something but is not involved. But then the part about the not intervene or seek help is the weirdest. So we should definitely,
I think we just need to revise it.
yeah.
You know, define bystander and also make a comment about how you have a responsibility to say something, do something. Also, we just, page numbers have to get straightened out on this, when it's done.
Can this may be an oversimplification, I'm just thinking out loud here. So what if we just change the language to bystander, someone who is aware of dating violence or sexual violence, period. The bystander has a responsibility to intervene or seek help for the victim, something like that. I think that the intent is for people to realize that they have a responsibility to do something.
I agree with you.
So we can look at that.
And then I guess my other question was, is everything that's documented on all those forms and everything, are those really happening? Like, you know, is the process that's outlined in the regulations actually what's taking place? Are those forms being used? You know, are those the procedures that are being followed? And if they're not, we should be modifying it to reflect, because it's a very detailed, process.
So this one, do you wanna, maybe we can look into some things and then
Yeah,
at the
I
next
think-
policy meeting, come back and take a look at it?
I think we should, just because
Yeah.
there are a lot of questions,
I would also encourage us to, incorporate some of the building folks on this, just as far as like kind of what it looks like at that level.
Yeah.
I think that's important to get their voice on policies, so.
because this policy hasn't been amended since 2012. And I just feel like it's probably.
And I would say with some of the other policies that have been put in place and what has happened in the district in the past, this is an
Yeah,
important policy that
Yeah,
staff is trained on, students are trained on.
100%,
If there's a process, people know how to follow it. If there's forms that need to be completed, like, we have to do our due diligence on this.
And especially I want to make sure that it ties into, we're doing what we say we're doing, and that we're documenting what we say we're doing, so.
Almost just delete bystander. I don't know if I'm sorry, I'm reading this as we're all talking because I thought it was weird also, but I don't think it ever refers to bystander again.
It does.
And
It does talk about, it may not
There's
say
two parts,
bystander, but it refers to a student's responsibility.
yeah, and staff
or the
responsibility, but it doesn't call them bystander. That's why I think
Right.
if you just took bystander out,
Yeah.
you still got to say, hey, school staff, if you've seen something or have reasonable, grounds to believe, you should
Right.
report. And same thing with students, but it doesn't, and again, I just scanned it now while we were talking, but I don't even see reference to the term bystander specifically, again, in the policy, which is odd that you define it, that you never use it again.
And,
And I'm just gonna put this out there, I mean, these are protocols, and should protocols be part of the policy?
right,
I mean, you have a policy, then you have your protocols that go along with what you're training people on and expecting people to do. I'm not sure I recommend that the protocol needs to be part of the policy.
Yeah.
We should have protocols in place in the district, but,
to this level, maybe not so much.
right, and this is
Yeah.
very detailed, and.
I wonder if it's by law though.
I think that's gonna go to Dr. Earl's question about the regulation versus
There's
the
some-
policy
yeah.
stuff. 'Cause I was actually looking at that when we were talking too, and historically, you wouldn't have published regulations
Yeah.
approved by the school committee because then it becomes a policy, but it's
Right.
typical for administration to say, here's our policy, oh, and by the way, Dr. Duva has put forth these procedures, this is how we're gonna implement the policy.
It's at the quick Google that Andrew had, and we'll look into this more, it says basically that like regulations are based on district policies but are left to administrative discretion on design and implementation. Regulations should not be adopted by the board but may be reviewed for compliance with law and board policy. And so like the policy is controlled by the board, but the regulations are really like the
And that's how
administrative.
Dr. Duva and his team would implement.
And so that's why they're separate, which I made sense in my brain of why they would be separate, because if not, you'd always have to be like.
But yours are
but-
next to each other
Yeah,
and
they
all
read as
approved and everything else,
policy,
so I
yeah.
think that's where it gets.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I would recommend that we table this one
Yeah.
and give the administration some time to kind of work through it, but I do agree that it's an immensely important one and that we want to make sure that obviously we're in compliance and then also that like this is updated, so.
And I'm looking for a reference, so like, there's a table here of recommended disciplinary actions. And I'm wondering where that came from.
Just a couple of other things. I'm sorry.
No, that's,
Just a couple of other things. Picky little pig, under on page 4, investigation 3. And 2 too. Also, it's little pig. And is there a what about if there is a suspicion of sexual assault or some other assault? I'm curious, as I was reading this, why I didn't see any reference to calling DCYF. Shouldn't that be a part of the process as well? I didn't see that anywhere. And what about the police?
Regulations and
There
protocols.
is a reference to the police in here, that is part of it, but you're right, there isn't anything in here about DCYF. Alright, so we're gonna take this one also.
I'm thinking our social workers should have time to look through this as well, because in situations like this, I would expect they would be involved.
Oh, for sure.
Our school psychologists, our school nurses, I mean, those are the type of personnel I would expect to be involved in situations like this.
As I was reading through this was the perfect example of when we were having the meetings on the new policy of just tell who do I go to when something happens and how do I know what to do. Like this to me is like the perfect example of this is a 22-page document or whatever, but I just want to know that this is what
And
happens.
there's a lot. You can't just say, oh, let me look at this.
Right,
Like, there's
yeah.
a lot in here,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
if we could streamline anything, that would
Exactly.
be helpful for staff.
Like a student wants to know what happened, or a parent wants to know
Where do I go?
Where do I go? Where do I go? Who do I talk? I like that.
But we've also talked about the fact that there are policies, and that's one thing, and then what we put on the website to communicate
Exactly.
and help our families and students
another thing,
navigate difficult situations is a different thing, right? Like you don't want to have a really, really short policy because it's easy to absorb from the public,
Right.
but it doesn't cover everything that
Right.
you need to cover. Like there's two different things that happen in that way, and I think having a really solid policy is extremely important so that everyone understands and is being consistent, and then having that kind of abridged version on the website can be really helpful
Right.
because it's different. Okay, so it sounds like we'll do that, and then of course, like I think it's been helpful, Jen, in the past, like if appropriate, if Dr. Duval wants to invite any folks to the next policy
Yes. Yep.
subcommittee meeting that makes sense, or if they want to send their notes in advance or whatever, but I think I definitely agree that to get some folks' eyes on this one would be extremely helpful.
Yep.
And we'll do it earlier than later. The timing of scheduling, I wasn't here, but thank you for coming.
I do think too, what's interesting is when you look at the R ones, there's no approval on it. Like you'll note it, like how like the other ones it says like approved,
So maybe
amended.
they can go to the school committee for approval.
Yeah. So just something to note, like the R's don't have that same thing. So I think that they are in connection to, but not technically policy, like they're not the same. And so just something to think about as.
The problem is though you run into the conflicts like we had there. Maybe the school committee revised the policy, but then the regulation never
Didn't
gets
get
revised, but
right.
it's still public,
Yeah.
and that's
Yes.
a clear conflict,
Clear.
right?
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting, yeah,
None.
honestly.
Yeah.
What page is it on?
Me, it might just be two of us. I'm not a fan, not a fan.
We're gonna dig our heels.
Yep, that's what I'm gonna go down with. Yep, don't like it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
they
I'll
have
see.
dates on them for the regulations,
Yeah.
they do.
And,
it's
and
in
the
the
policy
middle.
itself is
Yeah.
relatively comprehensive.
I lied,
They-
I just
they
meant
kind of do
it's
it
like,
to each other.
it's not at the end.
And there's a formatting issue as well with the document to make it easier to read and follow.
Yeah.
like
Oh, yeah,
pages.
you were looking at that one, because
Oh.
it comes before the
It's-
form, right? Yeah.
Alright, so we'll work through that too, about like
It'd
what,
be helpful to put those dates, which is in Jamestown, we had them at the very top.
We can do that.
And that way,
Yep.
you see the policy at the top, it has the first read, the second read, when it was approved, when it was revised, then it's right at the very top of the policy and not somewhere.
Probably down.
Yeah,
bottom of
probably,
the-
long term, what might be helpful too is we're going through things, like there's some standard things that we're doing, that are just style, like almost like a style guide for policies, right? So like all policies, have the dates of whatever here, they use this like principle when talking about an administrator or whatever, you always capitalize just so that as it transitions to other committees, like there's some guidelines and guidance to give some. I noticed in a different policy, it references to like school sponsored events differently than we just wrote it in the one we were just writing, and I was like, oh, we should have
Yeah,
that.
because there
like-
are some similar.
yeah, like we always
definitions,
call
right?
it
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
like we always say this.
Yeah.
And also think about when these policies
Yeah.
were written and revised.
Yeah.
There's different committees, right? You can only
Yeah.
get through
Yeah.
so many policies and there's a change of hands and who's reviewing them, so.
But I'm saying like if we,
having a template or
yeah,
something
like creating,
is
yeah, like a standard template
Yeah.
kind of thing might be helpful. That could just live somewhere so that even to keep track of our own
Right.
things,
Yeah.
let alone a new committee.
The policy on definitions.
Yeah, because we use the same definitions over and
Yeah.
over.
School
and
premise,
over
school
again.
property
Yeah,
means
we could
this, or
probably
school
do,
premises means
yeah,
this,
we could probably do,
possession means
Yeah,
this, so
right.
honestly.
yeah, do it.
Promptly.
Say it's there and it just gets
Means
Promptly, I
this.
think Dr. L defined that one, I mean, Miriam went for promptly.
I don't know if I was the one that did promptly, wasn't it the student?
Could have been,
Yeah,
could
it's
have been.
fine. Okay, and then also that I'll roll over to the next meeting, the transgender, gender nonconforming, transition students, our policy is really out of date on that. It needs to be updated to reflect, more current thinking on the subject. Providence has a really forward, more protective student policy, and Jamestown does as well. I've attached a copy, I don't know if I attached a copy of the Jamestown policy, but for the next meeting, I will make sure that a copy of the Jamestown and Providence policies are attached for our review. Our
So
current
when
policy.
we did it, took us months, and it was a very long process of going through.
This is
really
ACA, right?
Reviewing it.
ACA one.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, our current policy is in compliance with federal and RIDE guidance, but it doesn't specifically call things out in terms of, specific things that we're in compliance with. And I just think some of the better policies in the state do that. So I'd like to see us do that as well. And Jamestown and Providence are two of the ones that do that. So I'll put that on the agenda for the next one as well. Does anybody have anything they want to bring up?
We just need to follow up on the GCB policy.
Yes,
next time.
GCB
Steph and I
also,
were talking about looking at it today.
Yep.
but-
I would like, Jen, if at maybe, I don't know if it's at our next meeting, but I definitely want to talk about the subcommittee memberships and terms and whatnot.
Yes.
I know that is something that I want to try to iron out before we start the new school year, if possible.
Yes, I expect that the DEI subcommittee will be bringing something forward out of that meeting to go to the school committee, so that would make sense for us to bring that out of this meeting also.
Yeah, so.
Okay. I'll add that to this one also. Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Awesome, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Colleen.
Thanks for